Hi, my name's Emma Falco and I'm here today to speak with you following a report made by a Peterborough law firm to advise that in the first quarter of 2014 there are around 47,000 possession claims made by landlords against tenants who had defaulted on their rent. Now, I think the most important thing for landlords to take away from this report is to ask themselves what are they doing to protect themselves and ensure that if this does happen to them, if this happens to their tenants, that they're protected and that they try and reduce their losses as far as possible. So the first thing really, and probably the most important, is a rent and legal insurance policy. So a lot of landlords will be aware that these policies are available and a lot may have them. But do you know what this policy covers and what you will be covered for if something goes wrong and what you won't be covered for and what you'll be expected to pay? So the things to look out for is, does it cover tenant rent default? So a lot of policies will be 6 months in advance, so you'll get either a lump sum at the start of the tenancy or you'll get it guaranteed to be paid monthly for the first 6 months. But after those 6 months have happened, or after those 6 months have expired, what happens then? So is there any cover should the tenant default after that time, or is there any legal expenses cover? So if typically if we need to go to court to gain possession of a property, it can take anywhere up to kind of 4 to 6 months. If your property is worth £500 a month in rent and you lose 6 months worth of income, that's £3,000. Plus you've got the legal expenses on top of that, which is around £900 to £1,200, depending on if you're going for a judgment for the arrears as well. So you need to study this policy to make sure it's covering you for these things. So you need to see whether it's going to cover solicitors' fees and the solicitor to serve the relevant notices. It's vital that the notices are served correctly because you don't want to get to court. They'll find an error with the notice and then you have to start the whole procedure again because the judge won't award possession based on that notice. From experience, the majority of tenants, if they're going to default on their rent, they don't do it within the first 6 months. It'll be 6 months to a year after the tenancy started. Perhaps they'll lose their job or they'll fall into financial hardship and they then unfortunately miss payments on their rent. So this policy needs to be exclusive of the whole, the life of the tenancy, not for a set period at the beginning or a set period at the end, and it needs to cover tenant rent default and legal expenses. Unfortunately, there will be an excess to pay on the policy, which is typical of most insurances, whether that's one month's rent or 6 weeks rent. So what you need to do is be aware of the excess and have some form of safety net in place for yourself. So keep a little bit by from the rent each month and put that into a separate pot. If something was to go wrong, you've got that you can rely on, so you're still able to keep up with your commitments such as your mortgage, and that you also don't fall into financial hardship. So just to be aware of all the clauses in the policy and what is covered. If you're a self-managed landlord, these policies are available to you. Occasionally there'll be a slightly higher premium for them, but again, something definitely worthwhile having. If you are self-managing, it's important that you've got your own late rent procedure in place, so you know what you would do if your tenant defaulted on their rent, how you would go about pursuing that and hopefully recovering the money. So have set out these things with the tenant when the tenancy initially starts, so make very clear to them what's expected of them, start out on the right foot and as you need to go on, and make sure everything is clear so both parties fully understand their obligations and what's going to happen if something does go wrong. Also, if you're self-managing, it's vital that you register your tenant's deposit. If you try to rely on a Section 21 to regain possession and the matter needs to go to court, a judge will not award possession if you have not got a registered deposit. If you don't take a deposit from your tenant, that's fine, but if you take any money as a deposit at the start of a tenancy, that money must be registered or you'll not be able to use a Section 21 notice to gain possession. So that's also something quite important to look out for. So really it's all just about protecting yourself and making sure that you're covered, making sure that you've got something in place that should something go wrong, it's not common, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. So you need to be aware that if it happens to you, you've got peace of mind that you've got something in place, and it's an unfortunate thing, but you've mitigated your losses as much as you can. So if anybody's got any questions on this topic or they've got any feedback or advice they'd like to offer, if they'd like to get in touch, I'd be pleased to speak with you all about it. Thank you.